Okay, we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Polkadot broadcast. It's Kristen here, and today here with me is Tommy, which is Alice and Bob from Open God Watch, uh, and Max from HIC. And it's the first broadcast in 2026. So happy New Year to everyone. First,
Happy year.
Happy New Year. Hello.
yeah, I think the beginning of 2026 is there's a lot of things going on. The inflation will be cutting to around 3% in March, and the EVM compatible is going to happen in January soon. But there are still some concerns from community. So there are some questions that community really needs some KOLs from Polkadot ecosystem to give some response. So very happy to have you two guys. Let's kick things off. Firstly, let's talk about EVM. Yeah, EVM is announced to be go live on January 20, right? Um, but to be honest, EVM compatibility is not a groundbreaking innovation. It's sometimes it's a basic line for L1s. So some people from community are very concerned about this direction. Because they're arguing that even with EVM compatibility, it won't necessarily lead to meaningful adoption due to a lack of liquidity. And also, in Web3, applications, if they want to grow, incentives is the growth is heavily driven by incentives. So for this aspect, I really want to hear your honest opinions on that. And how do you see the role of EVM compatible in actually driving real usage and adoption for Polkadot? It's a open conversation. So uh, anyone anyone of you can start first.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I can say one thing right away because I just had a conversation with an investor last week, somebody who is outside of the Polkadot ecosystem who doesn't really know much about Polkadot, and I told him that EVM compatibility with Hub is coming, and he was like, "Okay, tell me something new, right? Like this is not rocking anybody's boat, right? Like everyone who understands a little bit about like the crypto landscape in general, but not Polkadot specifically, but more generally, like the landscape in this space, you kind of take it as a given. Like so, this in itself is not gonna particularly boost investor confidence, in my opinion. Like as an announcement, right? It's nowadays seen more as a sort of a minimum requirement rather than sort of a particularly fancy feature. Maybe like 4 years ago or 5 years ago, you could say like, oh, we've got like a faster like EVM chain. That's great, but sort of nowadays, like as an announcement, it doesn't really rock anybody's boat. Now, having said that, I think internally it's still going to be a very important change. And in the past, we had a situation where if somebody wanted to build on in EVM on Polkadot, they would probably use Moonbeam. And a lot of the value started accruing to the likes of Moonbeam for a period of time, and some other EVM chains as well. Now this is being flipped on its head, right, with the launch of Hub, because now when you do build on EVM, and of course, like the majority of developers are more familiar in this kind of environment, then the value here does accrue to the Polkadot network because they will have to use the DOT token for it, and they're going to be all other things that kind of more directly benefit to the value of DOT itself as well. by being able to launch in EVM Hub. So short summary, I think externally it's kind of a bit of a nothing burger, right? Like nobody is gonna buy DOT because of that. But internally, I think it's incredibly positive and very positive, and in many ways long overdue.
Yeah, I would say I agree. It's the killer features of Polkadot are different. They are the amount of compute that it can provide, the amount of data availability, just the pure compute power. And EVM compatibility is it's basically a basic feature, but you can compare it a little bit with ChatGPT actually. So OpenAI had a very strong, powerful AI, but you had to, build it and use the API, and it was very difficult. And then they had this idea of maybe we can just build a simple chat interface. And suddenly it was hugely popular. And I think this is because it's sort of a very basic way of interacting. So I think EVM compatibility is a basic way of interacting, but it was not available in Polkadot previously, right? So we had all this, like we have hydration, which has great features. We have Hyperbridge, which allows you to connect to all those other chains, but there was no simple way to use it on chain. And so I think it's going to be, at least for me, it's for the first time as a developer, I actually see a reasonable path to interact with Polkadot on a programmatic basis, because building a chain is too big of a task for me, but building smart contracts is very doable. And I've been recently doing it. I've been streaming constantly, building all kinds of applications and prototypes. And some of them include smart contracts. And so I think it's a basic feature that you need just to enable people to come and tap into the functionality that is available on Polkadot. And then maybe regarding liquidity and incentives. So I know that there is plans to make sure there is liquidity on the network. And I think this is going to be a given. And then it's also, if you look at hydration, I think they are very smart in how they are placing the different pieces that are establishing a network of features that are reinforcing each other. And I personally disagree with the theory that you need incentives because time and time again, when you see that networks are blowing millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, the money is taken and then people move on. Yeah. So I think this is a rejected theory that you need incentives to grow meaningfully. What you need is, in the end, blockchains are application platforms. Yeah. And they are also economies. But what you need is, you need to have a meaningful plan of how do you build your small economy, how do you build your town into a country, into a continent, and how do you make this application development platform actually accessible. And I think the race is going to be around how you can make it meaningfully accessible to people and build the economy. And I mean, this is still speculative, but I think the plan that Gavin Wood has right now, where you see these primitives where you have EVM, which allows you basic programmability, then the Polkadot stablecoin, which is a basic economic unit, and you have Polkadot people, right? So you have people that can engage with money, and there is programmatic systems that allow you to build something out of that economy. And then they want to build the specific products on top. So I think this is a good recipe to actually build an economy. And so it's mostly going to be about delivery, about execution, and doing the right moves now that these recipes are there.
Yes. I think the EVM is really, we can consider it as a baseline, but for Polkadot, it's really an turning point that a lot of dApps can be deployed very fast, and non-users can really use some dApps to feel and to touch Polkadot technology. And for the incentives, I agree with Alice and Bob. I agree with Tommy, because in the Web3 history, we already seen that very huge projects that they raised billions of investments, and they give a lot of incentives, but once the incentive ends, their chain gonna be an empty city. So I don't think incentive is everything, and it's just a small part of it. So moving on to the adoption, and now that product-centric strategy has been clearly defined, with Parity taking the lead on product development and moving toward faster iteration, what I want to hear, two of you to share your opinions on, what kinds of products would you most like to see, within the Polkadot ecosystem. Yeah. Who wanna start first?
Yeah, I mean, so it is indeed like a massive change here, right? That Parity is starting to build more products in-house. It's in many ways like a 180-degree turn from, sort of building the ecosystem, the open and permissionless platform, and then letting anyone and everyone go and come up and build cool stuff. That was the initial idea. It worked to a certain extent, but I think we can all agree that it didn't work perfectly, right? It's not that we got like really like the, particularly like innovative products that were built on Polkadot that really took advantage of the underlying features that it presented, right? And when over the last couple of years, some, I don't know, new interesting things came out, I don't know, Hyperliquid for some reason comes to mind. In theory, like something like that could have been built on Polkadot, but it wasn't. It was built on a standalone chain, right? And so we didn't really get the kind of developers that took full advantage of the platform and the technical prowess that Polkadot represents. And that's kind of unfortunate, because it really means that Polkadot was never really allowed to shine, because it never really had these kind of killer apps that I guess everyone was hoping and wishing for. And I think now what, under Gavin's new vision, since he assumed the CEO position again, he wants to bring this capability back in-house. He wants to bring it to Parity. And Parity is, of course, like the entity that is best placed to build the kind of products that can only be built on Polkadot, right? That really take advantage of the technical capabilities, because Parity, like nobody else, understands like the sheer power, right? Like the engine power that Polkadot provides, let alone Polkadot Jam, right? I mean, we're not even talking about Polkadot Jam yet, right? Like the raw compute power that it provides, right? Very few people understand it, and therefore, they never really built anything that kind of properly took advantage of that. And I think with Parity in the driving seat for product development, that is going to change, right? Because Parity understands what Polkadot can actually do. I mean, at this point in the cycle, we don't need another like DEX or like a perp DEX or like a meme coin launchpad. Like that already exists like in 27 different ecosystems, and everyone and their grandma has one. So I mean, we're now kind of in a situation, right? And it's of course also been like, as an investor, being a bit infuriating, because you have so many copies, right? And like yet another this and yet another that, right? And I mean, if you also see a little bit what's happening in the L2 space on Ethereum, right, where I'm also spending quite some time, I mean, there aren't really like any great innovations coming out of that. It's like copying, right? I mean, the L2s are kind of on Ethereum are kind of dying as well. But and then everyone's trying to make another quick buck and so on. Copying some existing products that have proven successful. And now with Polkadot and the new strategy here, like under Parity, that's a complete departure, right? We're going into an entirely different direction. As I said, like saying the thing, like only Parity, I think, at the moment understands what can really be built on Polkadot. Now, that's going to change, right? That's going to change. If and that would be my prediction, right? Parity comes up with a bunch of like killer apps, let's call it, right? Then also other developers are going to wake up to that and say like, oh, amazing, now that this thing exists, what can we build on top of that, right? And I think that's really where it's going to start getting exciting, because then only on Polkadot you have these kind of applications. I mean, it all sounds quite abstract at the moment. What really are we talking about, right? I mean, I guess the one thing, that where the cat is already like out of the bag and that people understand to a certain extent, at least, is the whole proof of personhood idea, which is a massive issue, right? It's something that has not really been solved by anyone yet, right? There's always like these extreme positions between complete anonymity and fully KYC'd identity, right? It's either or, right? And I also don't really see anyone else trying to tackle it. Whereas Polkadot, under Parity's leadership, is doing quite exactly that, right? And we still don't know all the details, but like these kind of gamified, proof of attention, kind of games that kind of let you claim an identity and then also maintain it over time, and have relatively strong, even if not perfect, but relatively strong Sybil resistancy elements embedded. That's actually a really, really powerful thing. So like this in itself, isn't necessarily like an end product either, but it's something very important and something that, we all really wanna, I mean, at least I, but I think many other people as well do want to see, because of all the other things that it enables, like sort of the second, third order effects, right? I mean, things that have been mentioned are like fair airdrops. Okay, interesting use case, but I think it's much more than that. I think it's also sort of, for example, like in social media, right? Like we obviously have like a massive bot issue, right? That half, maybe much more than half, who knows, of content online is generated by like AI agents, and with like some sort of a proof of personhood module, right? That could very much be combated, right? And sort of social media kind of is kind of an obvious thing. Another thing, sort of more generally about authentication, right, of AI content, that could also kind of fall into that, right? Not just in social media, but in also other like sort of AI generated content. Sort of, I think this is kind of a direction where there is like massive growth potential. And there is more, but some of the things we don't really know yet. But I think this is kind of the direction that we're headed, and having Parity come up, build some amazing products. Well, we haven't even mentioned about like the Polkadot app and like what was demoed in Buenos Aires, right? I mean, we were all there. The sort of the end-to-end encrypted but on-chain chat, right? That could also be like a very, very interesting, base layer on top of which other things can be built, right? But so basically the thinking, if Parity pushing out like a couple of these really cool features, still more on the infrastructure level, but like let's call it like user-facing infrastructure, right? That like regular people can use relatively easy, and then on top of that have a bunch of like third-party developers building cool stuff, and Parity building more cool stuff. I think that's a pretty bullish direction.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that having a killer application is the dream of everyone's. And sometimes copy applications works, but sometimes they don't. There are many factors that contribute to a successful application, but I think get everything ready is the first thing to do. Get the technology ready and make sure that we are trying continuously and like iterate very fast. That is the ground for the killer applications, born. So Tommy, what's your view on that?
Yeah. I feel like I want to give two different answers. One answer is what I've always been talking about. So the really practical applications that Web3 enables. So of course there is a bunch of DeFi applications, but there is also very practical things. And I think we actually already see them. So Origin Trail is doing really good, always growing. And then Peak is also very interesting because it's connecting machines to blockchain, and it's allowing those machine economies. And I think these are the practical use cases, also Energy Web, right? So we are seeing the practical applications already. And I think especially what I saw in Hong Kong last year at Consensus is that the conversations there were about integration into industry processes. Yeah. So I think that would be highly interesting because it has an actual tangible benefit on the real economy in an industrial or business scale. These things would be interesting. And then I also have like this second answer, and that is not what would I like to see, what kind of applications would I like to see, but what kind of applications would I like to build. Yeah. And so recently, so Claude Code made this big breakthrough in terms of it has a really great model and the features are getting really good. And so it becomes really feasible to prototype applications very quickly now. And over the Christmas holidays, I've been prototyping like crazy. And I've been building a sort of this small social network on top of the Paseo testnet. And it's just smart contracts. But I've building chat, I've building like blog posts, I've been building a forum. And these are just proof points, right? And I think there is this really interesting design space where you can just make an exploration and build social applications that are fun and engaging, also games. And so I think that right now, 2026 is going to be a year that is really sort of like a golden age for independent developers, for small developers, like single people or very small teams, and they can get a lot of stuff done. They can get big prototypes up, which I think is a big risk for any kind of financial application, because we will see a lot of financial applications that are just made up by AI and they are not secure at all. This is going to be a risk. But I think for anything that is not dangerous in terms of financial terms, but just you can get a lot of great features out, like big volume of features in a short time, these applications would be really interesting. Yeah, and I don't know, it's just weird to me that I can very quickly build like a forum and a chat room and a blog system on the blockchain, but you don't see it anywhere in the world. So I think people really haven't tapped into their creativity yet. Yeah? And so Ethereum has been growing not with a huge number of incentives. It's not like the Ethereum Foundation was putting liquidity incentives everywhere. It's not how Ethereum has been growing. It has been growing because there was a strong culture of people that actually were interested in the technology and wanted to build something. And so I think the direction right now with the Polkadot app, with the app portal coming up and anyone having the ability to deploy their app and it is visible in the app on your phone, I think that's going to be interesting. And I'm going to play around with that too. I have an NFT game on my mind still that I want to build for 2 years, and I did not have the capacity. I feel like I have the capacity now. And I think we should also, like there is this industry scale applications that we want to build, but then I think we should also, like the Polkadot Builder Party, just create an environment for small builders to come up with things. And then if you have 1,000 people testing out their ideas very quickly, I think there will also be great things coming out of that we cannot make up with our minds, but that just come out of the experimentation.
Yeah.
So I think we should have that culture also for the people.
Yeah, culture is very important. And now we get ready on the technical side. And Max is really shout out for the POP. And Tom is very happy that finally the independent developers age is coming. Okay. Thank you for sharing. And now let's move to the inflation. The inflation is very exciting. There's a funny story. I came across an OG in Polkadot ecosystem. He was a big holder of Polkadot, and he was complaining to me that the inflation of DOT is very high, and it's just 1 month ago. And I was surprised to hear that he still didn't know that the Polkadot inflation is gonna cut significantly. So there's a lot of work to do. So I wanna bring up this topic for inflation. That I wanna to emphasize again to the community members and for the audience who are watching that the Polkadot inflation gonna cut to 3.4 in March, which is 2 months later. So you should know about that. Okay. The first question is for Max, and inflation is being reduced, and from an investor's perspective in today's crypto market, does lowering inflation actually have a meaningful impact on token price, or are there other factors now more decisive? It's a very sensitive topic.
Yeah. I definitely agree with your first part that we have to get better at communicating that, right? Because like in your example, big whale doesn't actually know about it. I can only echo that. I mean, I've been talking to investors both inside and outside the Polkadot ecosystem. Well, I mean, the people outside the Polkadot ecosystem definitely don't know about it, right? Like nobody has ever heard about that, right? And when I say it's kind of modeled after the Bitcoin halving schedule and so on, then they go like, oh, okay, that's actually interesting, right? Because everybody kind of in crypto understands like the logic of Bitcoin and like these step curves, right? Where there is like sort of a halving day where it's cut in half, and it's like these specific days where the whole community can rally around. So that generally, like, I think is a very positive like signaling point. The question is, of course, just whether it's gonna be enough, right? Because price is always like a product of supply and demand, and only cutting supply but not doing anything about the demand side is not going to work, right? Now, it's one of the two variables that have to be addressed, but it's not a sufficient one. So, let's see what happens to the price. I mean, we all want to see the price go up. If it doesn't go up, right, it can be either one of two things, right? Either the supply hasn't been sufficiently cut, or more likely there isn't enough demand, right? I guess a better way of saying it is we have to work on both, right? So I consider this, first halving here that is coming up in March, a very positive step, right? I very much, like, as an investor, agree with the point that inflation has been too high. It also has been higher than in most other ecosystems, just like, so take that kind of reference point, even though I guess there is no perfect number here. But I guess the bigger question is more around the demand side, right? So supply side, okay, we kind of got that solved, so to speak. We have to improve the messaging externally, but it's kind of solved. But the demand side is like an entirely different beast, right? And there are some interesting, ideas here. Again, this goes back to this sort of more product-focused, future that Parity is trying to build. There are many ways to try to lock up, like, DOT in liquidity pools, to use it as fees, to use it as collateralization for like a PUSD, right? Which in itself could also be like a pretty big one if that's executed well. But yeah, so it's supply and demand. Just the inflation, cutting the inflation schedule in itself, or like inflation is the wrong word, like the new issuance schedule, that in itself is not gonna be sufficient, but it's definitely the first piece of the puzzle. Now, there's another thing that I think we have to say when talking about this topic, right? Because by cutting issuance, right? Okay, we hope that it's going to be good for price, but like the other side of the equation is of course the treasury, right? These things are very much like intertwined with each other, because if there's less like new dot issued, then of course there's also like less of an inflow into the treasury. And there are different ways to look at that, right? Like one way, and obviously this has all been discussed many times over again, but now it's not just theory but practice, right? Because it does of course mean that there is less dot to go around for all the ecosystem agents and all the various like initiatives that in the past we quite generously funded, right? And now that the writing is on the wall and that issuance is going to get cut, and on top of that, token price is down, but issuance being cut is definitely part of it. Of course, there is less we can do with it, right? It's like a smaller budget, but that in itself makes me rather optimistic than pessimistic, because in general, like I'm more like a small government kind of guy, right? So I believe that if you think of nation states, I think that the government should only play a role, or the treasury, let's say the treasury department, in some very specific cases, but definitely not doing everything. That's true for nation states, and I believe that's also going to hold true for Polkadot, because this is a different discussion now, but we very likely have been like overspending on some pretty ridiculous initiatives in the past, and sort of now here in January 26 we see how aggressively they have been cut, right? And of course, for some of the people who are directly impacted, they're going to complain about it and they're unhappy about it, and it's like bad news for them. But I think for the ecosystem, it's generally like a good thing. It's a healthy thing. Let's call it like that. It's a healthy thing that we have to go through a more frugal cycle, and like inflation getting cut or like issuance getting cut is definitely like part of the explanation. It's not the only explanation, right? I mean, there has been a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse, to use this term here, that's been going around as well. But on top of that, right, new issuance coming down is definitely one of the elements that also led to this new reality where we just have to be more frugal, spend less on superfluous unnecessary stuff, and really focus more on the basics.
Yeah, I agree with Max. I think we had a lot of squandering our money, and not we, the ecosystem, and also there's always lacking the accountability, and there's the decrease of inflation, bring up these serious questions on the front. Before, we don't take it seriously because we always think we have a lot savings, but now it's really a good chance to make the ecosystem more healthy. And talking about the inflation, the inflation to the price, and I also agree with you that we should work on the demand and supply. Work both on demand and supply. And talking about the demand and supply, actually, Tommy was among the first to point it out. So how do you see DOT demand evolving after the launch of Polkadot Hub? Especially, what kinds of on-chain revenue could the hub generate, especially considering that transaction fees on the hub have been reduced by 100 times.
Yeah. So for demand, what gives a token demand? There is this common category that you look at, which is transaction demand. So So how many transactions are happening, and this creates demand. But this is not the biggest category. This is sort of the smaller category. The big category, the main driver is as collateral. So you put it up in somewhere where it is being used. And collateral is sort of a broad category. So what I also mean by that is also liquidity. So basically put it to use in some way. Yeah, you can either spend it and you need to spend it, or you put it to some use. And we can see a few success stories of that. We can see Ethereum. So the ETH token is used as liquidity a lot. It is used as unit of account in a lot of NFTs, where in the past, like towards the end of the cycle, people have been speculating in how much can they grow their ETH in terms of NFT trading. You can put it up for oracles. You can put it up for courts. You can put it also up in prediction markets, but there is sort of more of a trend to going towards stablecoins, right? But you see that liquidity, so it's sort of this token at the center, and then all other tokens are bound against that. ETH is a very popular unit here. Also Solana, also BNB, right? They did this very right, where for DeFi applications, they were sort of the center of that economy, and everything is traded against that. So I think that is a very important thing. And then, so if you look at the current Polkadot strategy, what we see here is the Polkadot stablecoin is going to be issued directly against DOT. Yeah. So part of the theory here is also, imagine you have a working economy where people are actually interacting with PUSD. Then the direct implication is that there is a usage of DOT. Yeah. DOT is put up as collateral, and you mean stablecoins by that. And if you look at the existing stablecoins, there is a lot of fees to be accrued. And the more you can set up the exact mechanics and define how the mechanism works for the borrowing, for the issuance, for the returning, for the trading, and so on, the better this economy works, right? And so this directly plays into the strategy of Parity, where they're saying we're building applications that are going to use stables because people want to use stables. And they for the regular everyday use cases. If I want to go to a prediction market, or if I want to buy NFTs, I would rather denominate in stablecoins. If I buy an insurance, I would rather denominate in stables, right? And so I think the overall theory for cryptocurrency is just how much demand is it being creating, and how much is it facilitating a certain economy. Yeah? And so I think the first and best use cases are being liquidity and providing collateral for a stable coin, and providing collateral for all kinds of other cases. And what I'm really happy about is that Parity is now very intentionally focusing on crafting use cases around that. And then I think it's just about maximizing the growth here and just seeing what works, what doesn't work, and optimizing that, right? So I still think it's a long way to go, but I think Polkadot is there for the long run, and you will see others rise and fall. But you know, there is always a darling of the week or the month or the year, and then they're gone next year, right? And then I don't know, Ripple is having its season every 4 years, whatever. But that is not. I think it's about building sustainable economies, right? So I want to be a citizen of a future where I can participate in money, and I can participate in social networks with people, and we're building our own economy, and it's reliable and it's sustainable, and it's a long-term thing. Not sure how happy this does make investors, right? But I always held a very long-term perspective on all of those things. And so I have my eyes on the features around proof of personhood and the stablecoin, because once I'm going to like extend my smart contracts a bit, I want to integrate those features and see how you can play around with that, right? If I want to sell trading cards in a trading card game, you can pay me in dollars, like stables or whatever. That's one thing. And then maybe a little bit further down the road, dollar is not the only stable coin that is attractive in the world. I think there is euros and won and yen and all kinds of and like Turkish lira and all kinds of liras in the world, and all kinds of dollars in the world that would be attractive. So I think also bringing them on chain in an economy and creating forex markets which are high volume, where there's a lot of like trading volume and money to be made, I think this is also going to be interesting. So I would be also hoping that DOT is not just used for dollars, but also for all kinds of other currencies.
Okay, thanks for sharing. It's very informative opinions, and the audience really can get a lot of knowledge from your sharing. Thank you. And I've seen some comments in our in our comments section. I'm very happy to see so many comments, and no matter it's good or bad, and I think it's supportive for us. And but I suggest the audience ask some informative questions, because for other the questions, different people have different opinions, and I think if the informative questions is the question we can take, and we can give you some precise answers. So if you guys have more questions regarding today's topic, feel free to leave your comment, and I will select some good ones to share with our guests if possible. Okay, let's move to the last topic, which is the prediction for 2026. Let's just boldly predict for 2026 that either you can talk about what you are dreaming to that Polkadot will happen, and or what would excite you in 2026 in Polkadot, or you can predict 3 things that will happen in Polkadot by 2026. So, we want to kick it off.
All right, I'm gonna try to come up with like a catchy phrase. Ecosystem agents are dead. Long live the ecosystem agents. So, what do I mean with that prediction for 2026? So we had kind of this culture of ecosystem agents in Polkadot for different kind of verticals and different ideas, different verticals. That in one, like, from marketing to media to onboarding to all kind of things, right? But I think the thing that they had in common is that they were always looking for money from the treasury. And I think that's going to end, or it has already ended, essentially. Like, the paid ecosystem agent is dead. Like, I think that's been made sufficiently clear now. Some people are still kind of trying to fight it, right? I mean, we just saw the coups be coming to an end, for example, right? They're not getting paid anymore, it seems, right? I mean, the marketing bounty has been shut down. That's already some time ago now. We'll see what happens to like events bounties. Basically all the DVs, sorry, not the DVs, the DFs, the former DFs, all of them have been shut down as well. So all these kind of ecosystem agents that were paid to do something, they're coming to an end, or they have already come to an end, right? So that's why we kind of call it the death of the ecosystem agent. But to continue with this analogy, long live the ecosystem agent, I still think ecosystem agents have a very important role to play in Polkadot. And it's not actually me saying that, but it's very much what Gavin Wood is or has been saying for like a very long time. One particular speech I remember is like the closing ceremony of the PBA in Bali, where he went on stage and said, like, now you're all ecosystem agents, right? The agentic society. You're an agent of change. Like, go out and do something. And I think in 2026, we're going to see a bit of a comeback here of agents of Polkadot, which are not necessarily like employees of Parity or the Web3 Foundation, but other people who kind of understand the ecosystem and who do something in one way or another, but who don't directly get paid for it, right? That's kind of the change that's that is happening, that has happened, and that I think is very sensible and very positive. Now, of course, these people still have to get money in one way or another, but it does not necessarily have to be from the treasury, from the foundation. I mean, there are many other ways how to get funded. I mean, someone in terms of media, for example, well, I mean, you guys with Polka World are running a successful media business. I think somebody like pointed out in Ethereum, there's like Bankless, right, which is actually quite a successful podcast for Ethereum. You know, they're profitable because they're running ads, they're doing Google ads, they're doing like product placements like any other podcaster would do, right? They're doing a pretty good job there. So these types of like ecosystem agents, I think, can very much resurface, but just under like a new funding model. And I think, I don't know, I mean, I can't say for sure if this is what Web3 Foundation has intended here, right? With this kind of shock therapy of kind of closing everybody down and like withholding or with like just turning off funding. But it could very well be that, you know, that's kind of part of thinking, like who can actually stand on their own 2 feet. And I still think, you know, a lot of people will be able to do that in different spheres. If there is something that you're providing of value, right, then probably there is also like a source of funding. Again, it doesn't have to be a centralized source of funding. It can be a market-driven source of funding. I'm quite excited about that actually, because I think this whole idea of the agentic society, right, and again going back to this speech, right, in Bali that I remember from Gav, it's actually a very positive vision, right? The agentic society. It's not like that you're sitting there and waiting for somebody else to tell you what to do, or, you know, here's your paycheck and go and do that. No, it's more like, yes, you've got the tools, you can go out and build something, you can do some service that the world requires, right? Like you can do something and make a nice living out of it, and, you know, contribute to the change that you want to see. So, you know, ecosystem agents are dead. Long live the ecosystem agents. Yeah, sorry for twisting this old phrase a little bit into this new domain, but that's my prediction for 26.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think people want to stay in Polkadot is because they love Polkadot and can see the value of Polkadot, not only because Polkadot is paying for them. And I think the VC bounty, which was closed by Web3 Foundation, for their first cohort, I think they paid to a lot of KOLs, but in the end,
you mean?
Yeah, and they actually paid to a lot of KOLs to, you know, promote Polkadot, but it doesn't end up work very well. It doesn't have any, you know, concrete effort, or don't have some impact on the market. So I think you know, we have to, you know, we really need some people that they can, you know, stand on their own feet and they can really messaging the real value of Polkadot. That, yeah, it's a healthy change, I think. So how about you, Tommy?
It's a bit more abstract predictions. I would say I think this year is going to be the year where we see a lot of cypherpunks flocking to Polkadot. So people that were impressed with the original vision of Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is a very specific product, specific to money, or I don't know how you want to call it, gold. But I think a lot of the cypherpunks that are interested in the original values of the internet, of the freedom that it brings, of the privacy that it brings, of the how it creates tools for social change and social impact, I think these people will be flocking to Polkadot. I think that parity will start to feel more like Google in the 2000s in terms of just like constantly bringing out new products, iterating on them, maybe throwing them away again. But this feeling of, okay, there is a lot of stuff happening at the same time. They're bringing out new things. Some of them are becoming successful. I would be hoping there is breakout products there. And the thing that I'm hoping for in the second half of the year is that there is 1 or 2 Polkadot or parity products that are actually modular in a way where they show how you can build true Web3 products, and they're modular in the way that maybe individual agents or entrepreneurs can attach themselves to those products and build like business cases on top of them. So where you have synergies, where you can create markets, where you can create like small market economies or marketplaces where individual merchants and vendors can come in and trade on those markets, or something that has to do with trading of real life products, something like that. That would be really good. And where you can leave out all of those middlemen that are taking just lots of the margin, and leave more of the margin for the people that are actually doing the trading. Yeah, and I would say combined with that, that only works when we break out of the Web3 bubble. So I saw this prediction earlier at the end of the year. It's not that more people are coming to join Web3, it's that Web3 is becoming more normal. And it's, of course, you can be one of those nerds that hangs around in the community, but it's just Web3 is going to be like, I don't know, Google Cloud, Amazon Cloud. It's just a boring thing in the back end. It's a technology, it's an industry. And of course, there's all the interesting stuff going to happen that we're hoping for. I'm still very positive on that. But it's going to be less of a niche thing. Yeah, and people might be using apps on their phone and don't even know what's going on.
Yeah. In one word, and in 2026, the Polkadot tech is gonna be touchable. Okay. And I've seen some comments from the audience. Jiv Pen, she asked what specific product initiatives like Gem or smart contract on Relay Chain do you think will drive the real adoption and user growth in 2026? I think we've already touched the questions on our first and second topic, and we have a recap, and you can look at the recap of our broadcast today. So I think we've touched a lot in our conversation, and there's audience need time to sink in. There's a lot of tons of informations here. So that's all for today, and thanks for Tommy and Max for sharing, and thanks audience for watching, and we will keep posted on the everything going on Polkadot, and see you guys next time.
Perfect. And before we wrap, one quick plug from me. In less than a month, in February, we have Consensus Hong Kong. So everyone who's watching here, please do come. I know that the two of you are coming, right? Tommy and Kristen flying out to Hong Kong. So Hong Kong welcomes you. We're trying to put together like a big show for Polkadot once again, organized by Polkaport East. This is funded by the Events Bounty. Has already been approved quite some time ago, so this is still going ahead as planned. Yeah, should be a good event. We have a big booth at Consensus. We're doing a few side events. Should be quite exciting. Last year, Consensus Hong Kong was really fun, so I'm really looking forward here as well. And yeah, everyone in the audience, especially also from the China region, where you're not too far away from Hong Kong, do come down here. I think it's shaping up to be a good event.
Okay, and thank you, and see you in Hong Kong. See you two guys in Hong Kong, and welcome to Hong Kong.
See you all there.
See you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.